Dawn?
Actually, Mr. Chairman, I have two things I'd like to bring up during my privileged time. The first thing is this copy of the Star paper dated July 17th, or July 11th. I'm reading it upside down, I apologize. On the front here, and this is concerning to me, big colored photograph of children at Idlewild driving adults around on golf carts from point A to point B. I support the Explorer program. However, I think this is a huge liability to this county and to the taxpayers. Okay? As you can see in this photograph, those young ladies are not wearing helmets. It only takes once. It only takes once. We now have Charterama coming up. I would caution the sheriff's office against this kind of thing in the future. Okay, that's an issue, a big issue with me.
That young lady is 12.
12 years old. I did not know that.
I do.
Okay? Second issue I have, and once again concerning the sheriff's office, I saw a video of an alleged altercation assault at the flea roast involving the sheriff and a citizen of this county. It appears that it initially started out as being verbal. It quickly escalated to the sheriff putting hands on said citizen. Did not make an arrest. Had the person escorted off the property, claiming the individual had no right to make statements in public that are protected by the First Amendment because he was on private property. Skinner Park, as far as I know, is really not private property. That being said, it appears in the video that the sheriff's girlfriend, once she realized his body cam was on, reached up and turned it off. That's a problem I have as well. Citizens, members of the public, anybody not on that department should not be turning police equipment on and off. So these are things that I would like to have addressed and see where it goes. That's all I have, sir.
I did witness that video as well. I saw that online. You know, most of you know I did 30 years with the Michigan Department of Corrections, and I watched the video. If our sheriff is operating like that, and you know, it was embarrassing. It was nothing I can say, because I reviewed disciplined officers throughout the years. If I was reviewing that video, I would take some type of discipline against that individual. You de-escalate. I don't know any training that you guys get anymore where you escalate.
Correct.
That's what that was. And you can read lips, you can see what happened. It was an embarrassment. That's all I'm gonna say on it.
It absolutely was.
Yep, we'll talk about it.
We'll talk. Thanks, Dawn.
Motion?
Make a motion, you wanna make it?
I'll make a motion that we go into closed session to review a legal opinion.
I'll second
Why we went into closed session?
Well, the history of the complaints and.
So, just to, I'm sure I'll brief over a couple things, but at the last meeting, I think a couple of board members brought up that they had had complaints that the sheriff was allowing his significant other to drive a county vehicle. And so this isn't the first time we've heard those complaints. I at least have had discussions with him in the past about it, that he couldn't do it. So the board asked me to get a legal opinion about what steps we could do. Of course, it's an elected constitutional officer. You can't direct that department, but you are responsible for certain things. And so we just went into closed session to discuss those things and what actions, if any, you can do.
There also, at that meeting, was an allegation of out-of-state
Oh,
travel with one of the county vehicles, which is not authorized,
In our
per
Right.
policy.
policy.
Our board policy, yeah.
It requires prior approval by the Board of Commissioners for any out-of-state travel. Sorry.
And to further that, it was for personal
Training.
use, personal gain, not county business.
I would say we got a legal opinion, board leadership and I met with the sheriff to get his side of these allegations, and then we just went into closed session and had discussion.
So what is everybody's feeling on what you would like to see done?
Well, I like to, strike 3, 1, 2, 3, you know what I mean? But I'd like to see a letter sent to him, and this is one more strike. We're gonna bring all the vehicles back, and it'll be his fault. Bring
So
back
that would basically be changing and
the whole
updating the
policy.
whole entire policy.
And it ain't just, it's officers, that will affect the officers, but we didn't do it, he did it, okay? And, let him explain it to his people that he screwed up. And it wasn't,
So the process to get to that is then going to be, is it a legal opinion or a legal draft of a new decided policy?
Well, the sheriff has a policy, and we gave this to legal counsel. The sheriff has a policy that incorporates the things that you've required in terms of take-home vehicles, so 25 miles out. In that, it's very specific, under sheriff, chief deputy, and all the other ones. In that, it, very clear that unauthorized personnel can't drive vehicle unless in case of emergency, after hours, not to be transporting anybody, not to be used for personal things. So when we met with the sheriff, he said, yes, his girlfriend had driven the vehicle twice in 2 parades. So we did caution that, but then also that back in 17, 18, 19, we're not sure, but the vehicle was taken to Virginia. He, I think for personal and for, he says, for professional reasons with his certification. So in theory, that policy should apply to him, I think, as well as everybody else in the department, right? I mean, that's kind of what the allegations you've got before you are, is that the things that everybody else is held to, he may not be. So I think that's what you're talking about expanding it out.
Yep.
No, we looked at, I would suggest as well, we don't have a clue who's driving those cars. You know what I mean? We don't have a system in place to do an annual screening. Mike brought this up, that we should, in that policy, when we update it, we should have an annual review of anybody that's driving these vehicles. Check their license, make sure they didn't get a drunk driving arrest or whatever. So we have a system in place there. There's nothing in there that I know of right now. Definitely there's a violation. I believe he took the vehicle out of state. He should have known. He's been a sheriff long enough. He went to the undersheriff and asked the undersheriff, sitting undersheriff at the time, what he thought. And the undersheriff told him, yeah, that's okay. This is what we're being told. And it's like, he's an elected official, so it's hard for us to, voters are the ones that are gonna fire him or elect him. That's just on them. It isn't up to us. It's kind of hard for us because it's a political year. This is a hot potato, but you know what? Right is right and wrong is wrong. I don't care when it got dropped in your lap, it got dropped in our laps. And we need to do something about it. You can do, go from least, forgiveness and move forward, admonish the person, but definitely, I think there was some issues that shouldn't have occurred.
Legally, we could say, right, starting Friday, all cars have gotta be left in the, I don't think that'd be the right thing to do. So,
We could make the sheriff park his car
yep.
after his shift is done and
I
leave
think
it.
we should direct the administrator to formulate a letter for us to see, and for us, You need one more thing to do, don't you?
Yeah.
All right, I would put it in Howie's lap. Okay, get Howie to do it.
You know, he does it, I do it.
Yeah, I know, that's why I
Yeah,
said,
yeah.
to formulate this letter, these thoughts that we're talking about here right now, for us to be able to see and approve
Right.
in another public meeting.
The letter should be in, not a reprimand, because I don't
No.
think we have the authority. It
Right.
should be a censure. We, as a board of commissioners, and we're not voting on it right now, you've got the evidence in front of you, either in an affirmative to censure the sheriff or in a negative to not censure him. That'll be up to each and every person to decide based on the evidence.
In disregard will create a policy change and update
Yeah.
by us also.
Right.
So we would take the existing policy, extend it to the sheriff, expand it for, I don't know if I wanna be tied down with language, but to ensure that the people driving our vehicles are qualified.
Right.
And then a letter to explain this and censure the sheriff?
Yeah.
I add one other thing. Bob Sanders and Mike, you guys said that a year, review over a year. I think you should do it every 6 months. I mean, I know it's work, but, sometimes, as a teacher, I remember when, anyway, I remember
Review policies.
anyone new hired.
New hires and
Yeah,
annual.
that too.
I think they do, I'm not sure what they do over there, but I think they do a criminal background on everybody every year.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I don't know about every year, but at least the beginning. So, when this first started years ago, the board, we found out about 2 complaints.
Right.
And the sheriff had basically allowed deputies to take vehicles home. Honestly, there's a lot of good arguments to do it. And the problem it becomes is, it's a compensation issue, right? So if you were to stop it, you might get agreements, right? Because that is a benefit. And so at the time, the board said, well, we need to collaborate on these things. That going forward, any new hires or anybody that moves can't be beyond 10 miles of the county. And the people that are in it already are grandfathered at 25. And then we received this at the end of 22, September of 22. At the time, we didn't do any data collection. And then in September of 22, we had discussions. That night, I emailed everybody, we had this in the last meeting, I emailed everybody the policy that we had. Then it was brought up in December, and then in January, which I think was your guys' first meeting, in January of 23, so just over a year and a half ago, it was brought up, and the board said, listen, because there were 3 people that weren't, and the sheriff had said, our bad, we made a mistake. Last barely had been the undersheriff and left, we had new undersheriff, he wasn't aware, and new hires or people that moved were outside that 10 mile. So then one of them had already left, Officer Cleveland, and then the other 2, the board at that time amended the policy to make it 25 miles across the board. So there's been a couple times, how we found out about it, and then also that we found out it wasn't being followed.
We have amended, and we have given and given, and, say, you give them an inch and they take a mile, we gotta cut the mile in half.
I agree.
It just make, we don't want our inch that we gave them to turn into that mile, I guess is what I meant to say, not cut it in half. I don't wanna cut anything from anyone that
Works hard.
that is working right now, but
That's
when
what
a
I'm
problem arises and we have to deal with it, I don't want that inch turning into that mile.
Right.
So
Agree with
let's,
Can I ask for clarification, because
yeah,
this is like history repeating itself, like Groundhog Day. The board talks about mandating some data, they have discussion on it, they don't decide on it, and then 6 months, a year later, somebody says, where's all that data?
Yeah.
And we're like, no, you didn't take action on it. So, Commissioner Seroczynski just brought that up. If we're gonna move forward with that, I want specifics on who's gonna do it, and what we're gonna do, and how we're gonna do it, so I can make sure that we indeed can do it, or is that even an issue right now? The officers, I think, just we're having this catalyst because of complaints we've got about the sheriff's use.
Right.
Not necessarily for
Not
deputies.
officers.
So do we go there right now or not?
No.
No,
not with the
minimize are
deputies.
not the issue right now.
I'm not saying
Well-
in case in the future, but
Yeah,
problem,
that's-
if
But
they
that's
don't
something,
fix it, right?
that's something, I mean, that, we can still keep that
Oh,
idea.
To look at a
floating,
policy
to look at
update
it.
or amendment.
Yeah.
if you did that, I would want that we just have some forewarning so we can see what data is there, that we can figure out, we got AVLs, automatic vehicle location car, you know, what can they track, how would we know, what kind of mileage, but that we have some forethought before we develop a policy that deals with tracking and or measuring miles.
Right.
And that should be something we should just be able to request.
I don't know if that data is there, that's what I
Okay.
mean, what you guys are thinking in your head, I don't know.
So we need to kind of find out if that data is there and then request it if,
Or put it in a policy, but
Put it in a.
Yeah.
before you do anything with a policy,
If,
Yeah.
if
do
you
this.
decide it's necessary, you're
Yeah.
saying, right?
Yeah.
Because we haven't had any complaints about
The deputies.
it.
But when we enacted that, I can't remember what year, I
So how we got
specifically
your-
asked for like an annual update. Because we're expending how much money on vehicles going out of the county. What is the cost factor? What are we getting in benefit? I get it's good to retain, you know, MCOL certified, it's a perk they get. But I would like to see, you know, what did they call it, a force multiplier? That was one of the arguments, to get, like, have their vehicles at home. I'd like to know how many times they get called out of home, how many miles they're driving, what it's costing us. And I've asked for that, and it's just too much work to do. That's what I've been told. Now, I would like to have a report annually or something on, at least to review the program that they have and to see if it's cost effective and it's working to retain people.
I'm not saying that's not a good idea, I'm just saying that I don't have the ability to do that.
They have to.
That would be a discussion we have with the sheriff,
Yeah.
and we put it in some level of documented motion.
Right.
Because we talk and then it doesn't go into a motion.
Because we thought we had that in it, but we didn't.
Well, there's a lot of things we talk about and then
Yeah.
all this stuff, and then somebody makes a motion
Yeah,
and
don't
it's not in
get
the
it.
motion.
Yeah.
that's what you get when you get 7 people talking.
Yeah, well, I think we just discussed it, and you wanna, motion?
The motion is to authorize the county administrator to draft an amendment to the sheriff's policy number 45, to extend it to apply to the sheriff and expand it for all drivers. Also to have the administrator and the legal counsel draft a letter for the sheriff, a letter of censorship to the sheriff, and to bring both back to the Board of Commissioners for future action.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded, is there any discussion anymore?
No, and I'd like to see that prior to going on an agenda.
Right.
Is that all right?
Yeah.
I mean, we do get.
You mean not in the packet, you mean,
Yeah.
Email us out prior to the packet coming out, just email us a copy of the letter. So we have knowledge of it prior to getting the packet.
It may not be done in 2 weeks, because of legal, it might have to go
Well,
to
if
the
it
end of
goes-
the month. So,
oh, you guys have that.
Can I have that?
Yeah, I'll get Patty.
You guys can find it.
okay, is there any more discussion?
Yeah, I got one thing. Hey, you guys are saying something, but you didn't take action on, somebody come up with a motion to, actually have the police department start documenting, you know.
You'll have to talk to the sheriff and the undersheriff on that. I mean,
Can't we
that's
make a
something in the
motion?
policy, once we get it back.
Okay, so we can't make a motion that we.
No, we can't tell the sheriff.
I don't think
Have
I
the
want to
sheriff-
rush into a
Into
motion
that.
like that
Yeah, we don't want.
without knowing
Legal.
what their procedure is.
Not even discussion?
Well, right now I got a motion on,
Okay,
I got a
let's do
motion
that.
on the table right now.
Right.
Is there any more discussion on that motion? Roll call, please.
Welford,
Yes.
Balulis,
Yes.
Fuller,
Yes.
Seroczynski,
Yes.
Raymond,
Yes.
Sanders,
Yes.
Lodholtz.
Yes, motion carried.